Okay, good Erev Shabbos to everybody. We're up to Daf Samech Ches in Zevachim. Daf Samech Ches in Zevachim is more famous because of the Rashi. Rashi in Daf Samech Zayin on the base, Daf Samech in Zevachim explains a Mishnah in Kinim, a very, very, very difficult Mishnah in Kinim that the Gemara brings down over here. Okay? So let's give you the Hakdama and tell you what we'll do and what we won't do. Okay, so now, Rabbi Yeshua said something that was unbelievable. What did he say? If you went ahead, you took an oila sa'if that's supposed to be brought above the chut hasikra, and you bought it below the chut hasikra, and then you changed from that oila in three instances. One, you bought it below. Two, you did malika of a chatas by only slicing one of the simanim. And three, you did this l'shem chatas. Lo and behold, says Rabbi Yeshua, that oila will become a chatas. That what? That there will there won't be a din of me'ila in that. There won't be a din of me'ila. Because why? It has a shas het to the kahana and they could eat it. Explained Rav Ashi that this is an unbelievable thing. It really was Rav Ada bar Ava who explained it. He said, Loit Rabbi Yeshua, the oila becomes a chatos. It transforms into a chatos. The Gemara asked, so let's say the same thing about a chatos that we bring the same oila above. You're above the chut hasikra, which is the makom of the oila. You bring a chatos the same oila. One opinion is, it does work. Says Rashi, it doesn't work. There's a big difference. What's the big difference? As soon as you went ahead and took this oila above and it made a slit as a chatas, right then and there, it's a chatas in the wrong spot because it's above the chut hasikra. Therefore, it's puzzle. When you then cut the second simin, which would be the maisa of an oila, it's saying it can't become an oila because it's a puzzle chatas. Masha'en Kain says Rav when it was below, and it was an oila, and you did the slit of one, you A, had chatas in the right spot, B, the right maisa, and the machshava of a chatas. That's the difference between the two. The Gemara now went ahead, and it's analyzing this statement of Rav Ada bar Ava, this statement that this oila becomes, according to Rav Yeshua, becomes a chatas. He questioned it from Kinim. Why did the Mishnah in Kinim say the following? I have two women with 6 karbanas. 2 that they went ahead and they designated, this is my chatas and this is your oila. Again, your letters has to bring 2. So this is my chatas, this is your oila. 2, they were bringing stam. In other words, there was no designation. They're leaving it up to the Kohen to designate it at the time of it being brought. And 3, it was designated, but not for a particular individual. What concerns us most, guys, is number 3, but I'll just explain 1 and 2. 1, these 2 is no good. Why? Because you brought them in the wrong spot. You would have brought them, perhaps you brought the oila in this spot and the chatas, the kohen doesn't remember. So they're in the wrong spot. They're out. The stuma works, because since you're bringing it stam, at the time the kohen brings it, whatever he designated for, it works. The kashas from the last one. The last one, you're telling me they don't work because maybe it's the wrong spot. Again, it's not. It's too different. It's no people involved. Just a designated oil and a designated chatas. The question is, according to you, Rabbi Yeshua, why doesn't the one below work l'shem chatas? After all, if it's an oila, if it's a chatas, great. If it's an oila, it becomes a chatas, and it doesn't, because you have to bring another one. That's the kasha. David Friedman asked, 1 second, you just told me, Rabbi Stern, he called me the rabbi, I call myself Laze. He said that you told me that it's only le'inyan mila, not le'inyan kapara, not le'inyan the need to bring another one. So what's the Gemara's kasha? The answer is right now, at this point in time, the Gemara is holding there's no difference. When Rav Yeshua said that you can go ahead and the oil becomes the chatas, that the person who's mechuyev the chatas would be what? The girl, the woman who's yoledes, she wouldn't have to bring a chatas. That's the Gemara's havamina. Einochinami, guys, in the teretz, and I'm giving you the teretz right now. The teretz is he never said his din by being Yotzi Yedei Yechayiv. He only said his din by Me'ilah, that there's no din of Me'ilah, that you can eat the meat, so there's no Me'ilah. But vis-a-vis the need to bring another one, of course you have to bring another one. So the kasha that we're asking from Kinim to Rabbi Yeshua is Nishkan kasha, because he never said it by being Yotzi Yechayiv. He only said it by Me'ilah. The Gemara first entertains that what? Maybe that Mishnah that said the Mefureshes is no good is not Rabbi Yeshua. It's not Rabbi Yeshua. That would be the easy way out. The Mishnah in Kinim is not Rabbi Yeshua. The Gemara, in a very difficult way, is going to go through the Mishnah in Kinim to show it is Rabbi Yeshua. Where do you see it's Rabbi Yeshua? Guys, take a look at Samech Ches Amud Aleph. Right before the Mishnah, 4 lines up. Samech Ches Amud Aleph, 4 lines up. Here's the lashon of the Mishnah. Rabbi Yeshua, Zeu Sh'amru, that's what they say, Keshu Chai Koile Echad. When it's alive, it only has one voice. Ukeshu Meis, and when it's dead, Koile Zayin, it's got 7 voices. Good? So what do you see? Who just commented in the Mishnah in Kinim? Rabbi Yeshua. And so therefore, you can't say the Mishnah does according to Rabbi Yeshua. He's agreeing with the Mishnah, right? Whatever the Mishnah says, which we'll see in a second, he's agreeing with it. So Memela, we got a kasha right now. What's the kasha? If you, Rabbi Yeshua, say that an oil becomes the chatas, why in the case of that case where you had oil chatas, a stuma and mufureshes, why in the mufureshes, the oil, the one that was blow to sikra, why wasn't it an acceptable chatas? What's the teretz? Continue the Gemara, guys, on Samech Ches Amud Aleph. The Rabbi Yeshua, Eimad Rabbi Yeshua, when the Rabbi Yeshua says the oil becomes the chatas, lafku emidei me'ilah. An oila you moil all the time because there's never shasheta because it gets burnt. Le'inyan, taking off mila, why? Because it has a shasheta of achila, that works. Le'mesikle lechayve mi amar, that the shbi yoytze yechiv, did he ever say that? He never said that. He never said that. Good? Okay. So that is, I gave you the whole Gemara. I gave you the kasha, I gave you the teretz. What I didn't give you, and which I'm not going to totally give you, is this difficult Mishnah in Kinim, which all we needed, guys, was the last line on Rabbi Yeshua. This one says 1 kol, this one says 7 kolos. So I'm going to give a little bit of it. The reason I'm doing it is and mostly that's the reason, I just didn't have the cup to go ahead and understand it well enough. And therefore, I'm not going to fool you by reading through it like I do understand it well. I do understand some parts of it. That's the beginning. And basically what it is situational. Situational. This woman, she says, if I give birth to a male, I'm going to bring a nadava. I'm going to bring birds. If I give birth to a male, I'm going to go ahead and bring birds. Good? So now, how many birds does she have to bring? Guys, look at the picture. She has to bring 4 birds. The one bird is a chiyuv. She is a yoledes. A yoledes brings an oila and a chatas. Good? An oila and a chatas. A nedava is oila. You can't bring a chatas as a nedava. You have to bring an oila as a nedava. So she's chayiv 2 more birds. In total, she's mechuyev to bring what? In total, what's she mechuyev to bring, guys? 4 birds. 3 as oilis. These are carbon oilis, and 1 as a chatas. Good? If the kohen would have brought that, everything would be great. But of course, the kohen did not do that. What did the kohen do? The kohen went ahead. Can you see this, guys? Can you see it clearly? Okay. The kohen, what did he do? What did he do? He brought 2 above and 2 below. So you're missing an oila, and you have an extra chatas. You only needed 1 chatas, guys. You only needed this. You only needed an oila and a chatas as part of the chiyuv. The dove is supposed to be 2 oilas, right? So therefore, what you're going to have to do? You bring 1 more bird. you're going to bring one more bird. That bird you bring will be an oila, and zehu. That's the easy thing. That's only possible now. In all cases, the first pair that's brought counts as the first pair brought counts as a oila. Fellas, this would work if they're all the same type of bird. There's two types of birds you can bring. There's a tar and there's a bnei yona. So in this is depicted. He put a little ribbon around the tar's neck, and the yona did not have it. That's his difference. That little thing. You see it? The little thing around the neck. That's the difference. So if he brought only a tar, then all he'd have to bring is an extra tar. But let's say you don't know what he brought. In other words, you don't know if the nedava was a tar, or was it, or it was what? It was a ben yaina. In that case, you're going to have to bring. I'm going to have to get this chart turned around if I can. You're going to have to bring. I got the wrong chart here. You're going to have to bring, if you, let's say you don't know which one. So let's say, guys, watch. She brings a tar and you bring a yona. If you don't know which one is good is for the nedava, you're going to have to bring two extra birds. You're going to have to bring a yona and a tar. And then it'll be puzzle. The other one will be puzzle. Right? So there, you're going to bring a tar, or you're going to bring here in this case, you're bringing a yaina. Guys, look, you see, you bring a yaina. And in addition, you're going to have to bring a tar. So that's two additional birds. You're going to have two additional birds. Okay. Let's see it inside. Tashma says that Yeshua, and you want to say that the Mishnah in Kenan that says the Mefureshes, it doesn't count. You're going to say that it's not Rabbi Yeshua. Umi motzas amihachi tashma ha'isha shamra harei kan im eled zacha. It's upon me to bring two birds as an adava if I give birth to a zacha. Yolda zacha, if she gives birth to the zacha, maybe shtei kinim, she brings four birds. Guys, a kan is two birds. She brings two. Achas l'nedava. One is for her neder. She brings two birds for her neder. And two birds for a chiyuv. So now, what do you have? You have nasna l'kayin. She gives it to the kayin. HaKayin tzarich lasasan shalosh l'mayla v'achas l'mata. The kayin has to bring what? Three above and one below. Well, the asa came. The kayin didn't do that. El asa shtaim l'mayla beis l'mata. He bent two above and two below. V'loy nimlach, and he didn't ask her. So tzrika shetavi od prei da'acha. She has to bring one more bird. V'tikrevenu l'mayla. That is when minechad, if all the birds were the same. Umishnei minim, but if the two birds were different, she's going to have to bring two birds. Tavi shtayim, right? She's going to have to bring what? Two more birds. It's going to have to be what? Bring two more birds. Okay. So now, let's say she said she's going to be a neder, but she doesn't remember what she said. She doesn't say. She didn't remember it was a yoina or whether it was a tar. In that case, she's going to have to bring three more birds, right? You have to bring three more birds. What's the three birds for? Is what in total six birds. The two in the beginning and four more afterwards, and which a total of three more birds. Because she has to bring two toirim for her neder. Because maybe what the nedava that she brought was toirim, and she forgot, and she has to bring, in addition to those birds, she has to bring three predais. One a ben yoina for the chatas that became puzzle, and two for the base tarim la'olam. In other words, this is basically all we're doing is adding another factor, which requiring more birds, right? So you begin with one, then you go to two, then you're going to go to three, and we're going to work our way up. And that's where I'm not spending a lot of time on this. Okay, next. Tavi tzrich levi ad gimel predim mimina acher umimid beis binim tavi dalid Kavanidra, tzricha shetavi oid chamesh predim, five predim, l'mayla mimin echad, beis minim, and two minim, tavi shesh, she has to bring six. Nasna l'koyin v'ini yadas ma nasna, she doesn't know what she gave him. Halach l'koyin v'asa v'ini yidei ma'asa, he doesn't know what he did. So you have two problems. She didn't know and he didn't know. Tzricha dalet predim, l'nidara, u'shtayim l'chay v'asa, v'chatas achas. That's a total of 7. Ben Azayom beis chatois. So Yeshua zeu shomer kashu chai, when it's alive, koile yechad ukshemes koile zayin. So the point is that you can end up with 7 birds. And Rabbi again, Be'ez Hashem, when we get to Masech Kinim, we will do this Mishnah. So I'm not feeling like I'm fumfering. We will get to this Mishnah. But I think in terms of pshat, you guys clearly all got the pshat, correct? You clearly got pshat that Rabbi Yeshua is the town of the Mishnah. So now we have a kasha. If he's the Tan of the Mishnah and he says an oila becomes the chatos, why in the case that we said of chatos oila and stum and mufureshes, in the case of mufureshes, and you say in mufureshes that the bottom oila doesn't count, why not? It should be a chatos. On that, the Gemara answers, Eimedam Yeshua lafkue midei meila lamesik la lechayv miyamar. He just said that what? It's not an oila anymore, the Indian being moil behegdish. It becomes a chatos that has a shaseta achila. But to say that the owner of that bird would be it's a chiyuv, that we don't say. Guys, you good? You understand what I did? Again, I put the framework in because, again, this Rashi happens to be the main mefarish that people use to explain that very, very difficult Mishnah in what? In Kingdom. Okay, we'll go weiter. Says the Mishnah. Let's I don't know, let's be goyrus. Let's be goyrus this Mishnah. Kol psulim shemolku, all psulim shemolku, right? And the Gemara will say what this kol comes to include. What the psul comes, they do malika. Malikasam psula, the malika is pasul. Ve'ena mitama besabliya. Okay, fellas, let's say a person has an animal, and you do a shchita on the animal, and the animal's a treifa. You can't eat the animal. We saw earlier in the Masechta, and it's in Masechta Chulin, that this shchita does help. It's not materit la'achila, but it takes it midei nevela. In other words, if you touched it, you wouldn't be tamei tumas nevela, which is an abatuma. So the shchita can be moitzi midei nevela. We know malika is not a shchita, but it is the proper way to go ahead and bring an oila sa'if and a chata sa'if. Just like shchita that doesn't matter it la'achila is moitzim de nevela, so to malika, even if it's pasul, will go ahead and be moitzim de nevela. The nevela of an oif tahar is when it's in your throat, when you in your mouth, when you eat it. Then if you touch, it's metama you. In this case, the malika wasn't good. The carbon's not a good carbon. But just as shchita of a treifa doesn't matter la'achila, but takes off the dinavela, who adin in the malika of a pasul will be mitzvah day nevela. Good? As I state in Gemara. For example, moilik bismal, you're supposed to do malika with the right hand, the kohen does it with the left hand. Oy balayla, karbanis are supposed to be brought during the day, but yom savoso, you brought it at night. Okay, in these cases, fellas, the halacha is that it's not a good, the carbon's not a good carbon, but it's not nevela. Shachat chulin bifnim, you shechted a bird inside. Now again, this is not going to be a good carbon, fellas, right? Why? Because you have to do malika. You did a shchita on a bird inside the Beis Hamikdash. You took a chata sa'if or an oila sa'if and you shechted it. Or the kachim bachutz, you shechted kachim outside. It's not going to be mitama bebeis abliya. It's not going to be what mitama bebeis abliya. Okay, let's just see Rashi for a second. Says the Mishnah, kol psulim begemara pligi kol asuyimai, ve'enim mitamayin shemli kosam mitarasan. The malika is mitarit lefi shenifsul b'kodesh, because the psul happened in kachim. V'hani milikasan. Shem alu lo yardu, that if it went up, it would stay up. Hilkach nami lo having nevela, therefore if it would go up and stay up, it's not nevela. Shachat chulim b'fnim, v'kotchem achutz, ein b'tamar beis abliya, afagad b'fnim ein shchita la'oif, even though inside there's no shchita by oaf, only a malika, V'chein ba'oif kachim ein shchita, and so too an oif of kachim outside. Mikol makom ein mitamim k'diyol v'braisa b'gemara, as we'll learn out. V'shachat kachim b'fnim v'loiketani. What about kachim inside, guys? What about kachim? Guys, you did chulin inside. You did kachim outside. What about shechting a bird inside, guys? Again, what's wrong over here? You didn't do malika. You did shchita. Shchita of chulin inside, meitzim de nevela. Shchita of kachim outside, meitzim de nevela. What about shchita's kachim inside? Instead of malika, you shechted a bird inside. So continuous Gemara, Rashi, v'shachar kachim ifdim de loiketani amina b'Gemara, the aisi b'zak klal. That you're going to learn from the rule. That you can learn from the rule of the kol. Very good. Molak b'sakin, if you did malika with a knife, molak chulin b'fnim, or you did malika of chulin inside. So guys, this is not, there's no such thing as malika with a sakin. It doesn't work. It's got to be a nail. We said atzma shel kayin, Rabbi Kiva said. It has to be atzma shel kayin. Chulin b'fnim, you did malika of chulin inside. Now malika is usually not a shchita. Or the kachim b'chutz, or you did malika of kachim b'chutz. Toirin shlo yigiyaz manoi. Now a tar, there's two birds. There's tar and a bnei yoina. The tarim have to be gedolim and not ketanim, and bnei yoina have to be ketanim and not gedolim. And the Gemara in Chulin describes at which point in time when the hairs begin to turn yellow, the feathers turn yellow. That's certain periods of time where it's either over the zman or too early for it. Shavas manu, or sheyav shagapa, its wing became withered. Or shenismis eina, it was missing an eye. Ushenekta ragla, or its foot was cut off. Mitama beis abliya. All these cases is going to be mitama beis abliya. All these cases that we just mentioned, it'll be mitama beis abliya. Let's see Rashi back in the Yom Aleph. Rashi, we have time this morning. Malak besakin umalika lehavi the atzma shel koyin beina, and you don't have malika because you need the koyin himself to do it with his finger. Ushchita lehavi. It's not a shchita kidaminan ba'akol shleichten v'neishu machlid v'neishu doiris. Fellas, you know what you did? You did an act of malika with a knife. Eye contact, fellas. Eye contact. Malika, physically, if you look at it, is nevela. What you're doing is you're breaking it's making it a treifa, breaking its bone, and then you're going in and you're being doiris. Drisa is one of the halachas of shchita that doesn't work. So if you do malika through a knife, it's nishkain malika, it's nishkain shchita. Once it's not a shchita, so memela, it's not metam, it doesn't take off the shem nevela. That's why if you do malika b'sakin, it's going to metama, because you didn't do a shchita. You did a malika, but it's not malika because it's using a knife. Memela, it's going to be what? It's going to be a non-kosher shchita. A non-kosher shchita it's not mitzvah nevela. If you're if you're doiris, you shia, drisa, these are all different things that we're going to see up psulim by shchita. So if you do a malika with a knife, it's a pasal shchita. If you did it right, that's what it is. So that's what he says. Malak b'sakin, it's not mitzvah nevela. Why? Because it's not the shayach malika b'chulin loy b'fnim. The next case, fnei shu doiris, because it's drisa. Malak chulin b'fnim ukachim b'chutz. Let's say you did malika of chulin inside or kachim outside. L'shayach malika b'chulin. It's not shayach loy b'fnim loy b'chutz. V'u adin l'chulin b'chutz. U'gemar amin and the asi b'zak klal. Chulin b'chutz malika of chulin b'chutz. Not only chulin inside but chulin outside. We'll learn from the rule. So in all these cases, and then on the Amid Beis, when you say Toirim that didn't b'nei yoina, guys, to begin with, you're out of the ballpark. You're out of the ballpark. If you bring if you bring a carbon before 8 days old, what's the din? You're mechusas man. Guys, remember, you're mechusas man if it's less than 8 days old. So who are din over here? If the Torah is too young and the b'nei yoina is too old, you're out. You're out. So Memela, of course, the Malika can't go ahead and be Maitzim Midei Nevela. And if you have what? You have a Balmum, it's out. So those cases, going over it again, Toimin Shloigiyas Mana, it's out. Because what? It's like a chulin less than 8 days old that can't be a carbonate less than 8 days old. Ubnei Yoina Shabbos Mana, or Shiyav Shigapa, or Shanis Masena, or Shinekta Magla, they're going to be Tama Beis Abliya. You know why? You could do the best Malika in the world. It doesn't make a difference. They're out. Zeh Klal, Kol Shepsula B'Kodesh. Anyone that the psul happens in the kodesh, meaning it went in fine and then the psul happened, ain't mitama beis abliya. It's not going to be mitama beis abliya. If you went inside, anything that psul happened in the kodesh, right? So the psul happened in the kodesh. So the oif was kasha for a carbon, and the malika was a good malika. Elawat. The psul happened in Azara. For example, you did the left, or it was night. So I had a kosher bird. I did it with the left hand. It would have been a good malika, but it was left hand. I did it at night. It would have been a good malika, but it was night. In that case, the malika will take off the shem nevela. Guys, good? Guys, you hear? Look at the lashon. Zeh klal. What's the klal? Kol shu psula b'kodesh. Everything was fine. But what went wrong in the Kodesh. In all these cases, if it's going to go up, it's going to stay up. And Memela what? If it's Nevela, it can't stay up. So you know if it stays up, it's not Nevela. However, let's say the Oif, before it came to the Azara, it was missing an Aver, or it wasn't right for a carbon. It was what? It was too old or too young. Or the Malika was not a good Malika. Let's say you did it with a sakin. In all those cases, mitama beis abliya. It's going to be mitama the beis abliya. Very geshmak. Amar Rav, smoil v'layla, ein mitama beis abliya. Good. That's the Mishnah says that. Zor v'sakin mitama beis abliya. Now, if it's a zor who does the malika, it will be mitama beis abliya, which is it's a chiddush, guys. Right? You're telling me. It's a zar. It came into the Beis Hamikdash. The oif was fine. Our rule of thumb is that it should be good because the psul happened there. But if a zar does it, right, it's no good. It's a zar does it or a sakin. It's going to. Rav obviously is disagreeing with our Mishnah. Mishnah smoil the isleach sheira biyom kip. Why small? You know why small is mitzvah day nevela? The isleach sheira biyom kippa. Guys, even though avoid is done with the right hand, on Yom Kippur, the kohen is going to carry in his right hand heavy coals, and his left hand is going to be carrying a spoolful of ketoris going into the Kodesh Kodashim. So you see that there is an avodah that is done with the left hand when he walks into the Beis Hamikdash holding that. So since we find in the genre of avodah, we find a lefty that works, Mamela, I can understand why the left hand that does a malika would be mitzvah day nevela. For Laila, I have Laila. How's that mitzvah day nevela? Even though it's you can't bring a carbon at night. Isleach sheir be'varim padarim. We burn the limbs and the fats at night. So Memela, it has shaykhis to avodah. Memela, if you go ahead and do malika with the left hand, it's going to be mitzvah day nevela. At night. Excuse me. You can do it at night. Night mitzvah day nevela. Good night. So lefty is Yom Kippur. And nighttime is because of burning of the Pedarim and the Emurim. Zor nami isleach sheira b'shchita. So why do you, Rav, hold Zor is no good? There is the truth is a Zor can do shchita. That's Zevachim 101. We know one thing that a Zor can do shchita. So l'chayra, it should be, since he does shchita, if a Zor would do malika, good, it's not to machshir the carbon, but at least it should be moitzim day nevela, and you're saying not. So what does Rav answer? Shchita lav avaydahi. Shchita is not an avayda. Memela, if a zar, there's no heta for a zar to do malika, and therefore it's not moitzim day nevela. Shchita is not an avayda. Vam Rav Zera, shchita is para bizar. If you shech the para aduma by zar psula. Umachve Rav Allah, and Rav pointed to this. Alaza, you need alaza, the skana kayin, evachuka, and it says chuka, it's ma'akiv. So you see that what that it is an avoida because it's possible by paraduma. Says more shiny para the kochi bedek abayasi. Paraduma is kochi bedek abayas, and therefore it's not an avoida. Fred more like called kenu kochi bedek abayas boy kahuna kochi misbech mi boy. So l'chayra, it should be a zor. It should be what? It should be puzzle. Amarav. It should be kosher. If you need koyin by bedek abayas, certainly you need koyin by what misbeach. So how can you tell me it's not an avoida? That's what it means. You tell me that it should be an avoida. So Amarav Shisha Rei Davidi my dahavi my midi dahavi amaris negoyim the lava avoidahi ubay kuna. In other words, just because you need a koyin doesn't automatically make it an avoida. What do you want to say? That if the paraduma, which is bedek abayas, needs a koyin, certainly shchita would be called an avoida. Says the Gemara, no, it's not true. No one's going to hold that the negoyim saying that a person's tamei tsaras is an avoida. Nonetheless, if it's not a koyin, it doesn't good. So who adin by paraduma? By paraduma, even though it's not an avoida, you need a koyin. Masha ein kain what? By shchita of a kachim, a lot of avoidahi. Says the Gemara, v'neilif mi bama. Let's learn out from bama that, guys, just like a bama, there's no kahuna by a bama. So just like a bama, anyone could go ahead and do the avoida by a bama. So memela, a zor has shaykhs to that. So let's say zor also, if he does malika, it's mitzvah midei nevela. Again, fellas, what are we doing? We're saying, look, Smoil has shaykhs because of Yom Kippur. Laila has shaykhs because of the imurim, the pedorim. So zor has shaykhs also because he's kosher bebama, and therefore, since he has shaykhs, it should be his malika should be mitzvah midei nevela. Says the Gemara, if you can't learn out from a bama, we don't learn out from a bama because bama is considered chayil legabe kachim. Fred the Gemara, v'lo, you don't learn a din from a bama. Vatanya minayin liyoitza shem ola lo yarid. How do you know if the meat went out and it comes back in and it goes up, it stays up? Shav yoitza kosher bebama. Because what? Because yoitza is kosher bebama. In other words, so we do learn out something from a bama. Fellas, by a bama, there's no walls, right? There's no walls by a bama. So there's no yoitza by a bama. And so the Gemara wants to learn out, if meat goes out of the azara and then it's brought back in and brought up in the mizbeach, we learn that from bama, there's no din of yoitza. So memela, you do learn from a bama. If you do learn from a bama, you should learn zoris what is something. And therefore, if the zar did malika, it should be mitzvah midei nevela. On that, the Gemara answers, you're not learning from a bama that yoitza. Where did we learn yoitza? That if it goes out, it comes back in. It counts. Says the Gemara, Tana mizois teiras ha'oila samichlei. He's samich on the pasuk zois teiras ha'oila. That what? It's a ribui. That anything that goes up stays up, and zois, there are certain scenarios where it comes down. But he's not learning from bama, guys. That's the key. He's not. So Mela, if you're not learning from bama, we don't have a source according to Rav for a zor doing any avoida that we should be machsha his malika, right? No, there's no malika by a zor. Says the Gemara of Rabbi Yochanan, my zor ein mitama beisabli ein achinami, ein achinami. No, there's no difference between smile. There's no difference between Laila. There's no difference between what Zor. Since Zor is kosher b'shchita, I would assume that he also therefore it's mitzvah midei nevela if he does malika. Okay, now we're going. So guys, you have machlokes, right? Rav says the Zor is not mitzvah midei nevela malika, and Rabbi Yochanan says it is mitzvah midei nevela. Okay, Tanan, we're going to ask on Rav. Kol psulim shemolku, the first line of our Mishnah. All psulim that we do malika and psula, it's malika's puzzle. So what does that come to include? Bishleim Rabbi Yochanan, kol lasuye, it comes to what include. Now it says kol psulim shemalkum malkas and psula, but it's mitzvah midei nevela, guys, right? You hear? We're missing the key words. Any psula does it, it's not good, but it takes off nevela, yeah? Now what does the kol come to include? According to Rabbi Yochanan, it comes to include a zar. Right? A zar that's not included in the Mishnah who does do it, it's mitzvah midei nevela. But according to Rav, you don't have zar. That's the kasha. Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan kol asuye zar. El Rav kol asuye mai. Lav lasuye small v'layla. No, excuse me. El Rav kol asuye mai. That's the kasha. Yeah? and meaning it doesn't include zar. So he's answering lav lasuya small v'layla. No, it's coming to exclude small v'layla. Fred the Gemara small v'layla behed katani. It's said openly. Tani v'hadim mefarish. All right, guys, let's look back to the Mishnah. Look back to the Mishnah. Kol apsulin shemolkim likosim psula v'enim b'tamim beis abliya. What does the kol come to include? Malach b'smola b'layla, but zar not. Fred the Gemara, what do you mean that kol comes to include? It says it openly. It says before guys. It says what? It says small v'layla. And for Rav, Tana, kol, v'hadim mefarish. What's the kol we're talking about? Small v'layla. But enochanami zar, not. Enochanami zar, not. So Rav's held serve. Nachakasha, Toshma. Zeh klal, kol shu b'sula b'kodesh, einu b'tama b'godim avesa bliya. As long as it went in okay, it's not going to be tama. Bishleim l'Rabbi Yochanan kol asuyei zar, el l'Rabbi asuyei mai. Okay. According to you, Rabbi Yochanan, what does the second rule come to include? Guys, we had shchitas kachim b'chutz, we had shchitas chulin b'fnim. We didn't have shchitas kachim b'fnim. When it's supposed to be malika of an oif, you had shchita of an oif. That's what it comes to include. So Seifa comes lasuye malikin chulin b'chutz. You only had malika. You had malika chulin inside. You had malika kachim outside. What about malika chulin b'chutz? You had malika inside on chulin. What about malika chulin outside? That's what it comes to include, but not a zar. Not a zar. Tiny kabasi Rabbi Yochanan that malika's the zar is mitzvah dein vela. Malka zar. Malka zar. Malka pasul. Hapigol v'nois v'tamei emitame nabesa bliya. They're all anything that's pigol nice and tamei. It's even though the malik you can't eat it. Nonetheless, it was mitarmen dein vela. Who didn't zar. We have a raya to Rabbi Yochanan. So again, I feel a little bad, guys, that I let you down if I didn't explain that Mishnah, because I let myself down by not explaining that Mishnah. But I think Be'ez Hashem at a later time. But I think in terms of Daf Yomi, I was yotzei my chiyuv that Baruch Hashem we have an understanding of the Gemara, right? Very understanding of the Gemara. Yeah.